Hi guys, if you're new here, I am Emily from wavyhaircare.com and this is Wavy Hair Care, my YouTube channel. I talk about all things wavy hair, so if this is an interest of yours, be sure to subscribe because that's all I do here. In this video, I'm going to focus on talking about tangles and what causes them in wavy hair. Part of what made me want to make this video was I saw a discussion online where people were saying that if you have wavy hair, tangles are just going to be like the bane of your existence, that it's just like an unavoidable part of having wavy hair. And while that might be true for specific individuals who have wavy hair that is just really naturally prone to tangles, I generally don't think that's the case. I think most people can get their hair to a state where it doesn't tangle, or tangles very little at least. I just thought I would talk about why some people with wavy hair do struggle with a lot of tangles, so that if this is something that matters to you and you would like to reduce how many tangles are happening in your life, you can start on that path to work towards that. When reading a book on hair chemistry, it talked over and over and over again about how bleaching or using other chemicals on your hair, such as perms or chemical straightening treatments, really damages hair and makes it higher porosity. Reading that book made me feel like, even though I think most people have this general idea that dyeing your hair, maybe especially bleaching your hair, isn't the healthiest thing to do, I don't think we really understand how it is by far and away the primary thing that makes hair have all sorts of different problems, and tangles are definitely one of those. So part of what was really interesting about that is it talked about how there are lots of ways that we can damage our hair, and some of those are really unavoidable, like ever combing your hair or ever bending your hair, wearing a hat, things like that. But all of those on what they call virgin hair, meaning hair that has never been chemically treated, will do extremely minimal damage for the vast majority of people. Where if you bleach your hair, that does some amount of damage right away, but then each time you brush your hair or comb your hair or wear a hat or go out into the sun, that's another one. The sun damages our hair. That was one I didn't know until reading that book. Then those will do more damage to bleached hair than they do to virgin hair. So it's kind of like once you dye your hair or bleach your hair or chemically treat it, then all these other forms of minor damage will do more damage. And so I think that results in people who dye their hair thinking, well, my hair felt pretty okay after I bleached it, so that's not the real reason why, a month later, 6 months later, whatever it may be, that my hair feels so bad and is dull and tangling and whatever other issues they might be having. And that's just a false form of evidence that if your hair feels okay after bleaching it, that doesn't mean that it didn't damage it, and that additional damage that happens afterwards isn't still tied back to the bleaching. And of course, lots of people like dyeing their hair or bleaching their hair, and it's just worth the difficulties that it might cause them, and that's a completely valid choice. I'm not here to say that bleaching your hair is the wrong thing to do if that's what you prefer to do, but if you have dyed your hair, especially if you have gone lighter instead of darker, then that has involved some amount of bleaching, and that is almost certainly the culprit of your tangles, to my understanding. And my reasoning for that being is that from everything that book said, the amount of damage that happens from bleaching just doesn't even come close to the other forms of damage, like being out in the sun, being in the wind, pollution damage, brushing our hair, combing our hair, wearing hats, etc. So that really is the biggest one. And I know that even for people who might really be like, I am over having tangles, I'm going to do whatever it takes, you might still feel like, well, what do I do? I've already damaged the hair that's on my head. And that is kind of the reality of it. There are some things you can do, like use protein treatment, or things like K18, I think it's called, or other bond rebuilding products. I have talked on my blog about how those, while they are Olaplex number 3 is another one. While those are like really widely accepted as being genuine and effective in hair communities and kind of in like the general culture, within like hair chemistry, those are pretty controversial. I listened to a podcast from hair chemists who say that they don't think there's anything really special about Olaplex 3 or the other bond rebuilding products, that they really are just protein treatments. And so they kind of put a band-aid on hair rather than truly rebuilding the bonds in your hair as they are marketed to do. And yes, that includes the fact that they have a patent. In an episode, I'll try to link that in the description of this podcast, they talked about how you don't have to really truly be able to prove the science behind your product in order to get a patent. So a lot of people think that because Olaplex 3 is patented, that means it's like really legit and really is repairing hair, but according to them, that is not the case. I wanted to explain a little bit about why damaged hair, aka high porosity hair, does lead to tangles, because I've up until this point I've kind of been conflating damaging your hair and getting tangles, right? And that is because low porosity hair will be really smooth on the outside. So each strand of hair is coated with cuticles, but they'll be kind of like a closed pine cone, or like shingles on a roof that was just made. So all the shingles are perfect to where it's overall it's really quite smooth. And so if you think about two smooth strands of hair being next to each other, they'll be able to move about freely and they're not really going to catch on each other because they're both smooth on the exterior, right? Where what high porosity hair does is it kind of pulls back those cuticles. So that's more of like an open pine cone, or like an old roof where some shingles have fallen off and some are kind of water damaged or have otherwise been damaged by storms or whatever it may be, where they start to kind of curl. And so then if you think about two hair strands where they each have kind of these random bits sticking out of them, almost more of like a barbed wire type surface, and then they're next to each other, they're going to catch on each other. And that's essentially what causes tangling or like knots in our hair, is the rough exterior cuticles of two hairs get caught on each other, and then, you know, more surrounding those catch on each other, and it just becomes a big tangle. Now, keeping in mind that dyeing our hair, especially lightening our hair, or other chemical treatments like perms or straightening treatments, are the biggest way that we cause hair to become high porosity, aka damage, which then leads to tangling. There are some other ways. So one of those is heat damage, but again, heat damage is way more likely to be a problem if you have chemically treated your hair before that. Then it's going to be way more damaged by the heat tools that you use. If you like using heat tools and want to continue them, you can use a heat protectant spray or heat protecting products to help reduce the amount of damage that you are doing with your heat tools. I've mentioned a couple of times already, the sun can also damage our hair, the UV rays, and they do make UV protecting hair products. And so especially if you are having a day where you know you're going to be outside a lot, or a lot going to the beach or something like that, using UV protectant hair products can reduce that. And also something, again, from that hair chemistry book that I thought was really interesting was people with naturally lighter hair, like if you are a natural blonde, or if your hair has started to gray or even gone completely white, your hair will be more susceptible to damage from the sun than people with darker hair. The chemical structure, like the natural chemical structure of more melanated hair, actually has protective properties in it that help protect our hair from the sun. And so people with naturally lighter hair don't have as much natural protection against the sun. But again, most people can spend lots of time outside and won't see any significant damage to their hair unless they have already damaged it significantly with chemical treatments. I also wanted to go over some other things that can cause tangles that are less related to bleaching. If your hair is just really dry, that can increase the odds of it snagging. Whether you have high porosity hair or low porosity hair, If you keep your hair well conditioned, it is just going to be smoother on the exterior, and that is going to assist it with snagging less on the surrounding hairs and result in less tangles. And if you have noticed more tangling since starting the curly girl method, then you might find that going back to using silicone products can greatly reduce the amount of tangling that you notice in your hair. And that is because silicones are emollient, so they essentially create this like microscopic film on the exterior of our hair, and so that can take higher porosity hair, damaged hair, and create this smooth coating on the outside. So then that protects it from snagging on surrounding hairs because it just coats all the hair so they're all smooth despite what is under that smooth layer being rough. Similarly, if you aren't regularly clarifying or chelating, depending on if you have hard water or not, your hair, then you might have product buildup or hard water deposit buildup on your hair, and that creates hair that is kind of similar to high porosity hair. That was my kitty. Hi, Pepper. Do you want to say hi? And product buildup can cause hair to tangle because that buildup from products or hard water deposits will cause the exterior of the hair to not be smooth. So that can lead to hair catching on the surrounding hairs as well. If you've been trying to grow your hair out or just haven't had a trim in a while, that can also lead to excessive tangling. And that is because dead ends will often split, and then those are rougher than non-split hairs, and so the ends of our hair in particular might tangle with nearby hairs. And then a lot of the time it might just start at the bottom, but you can still get tangles like higher up if you don't immediately detangle the lower ones. This is something that I experienced before I started the curly girl method. I had grown my hair out like as long as I possibly could. It was literally almost to my butt, and because my hair had so many dead ends and it was so overly long that the ends had gotten somewhat damaged, it started tangling. And I'm somebody who's never really had a ton of problem with tangling. I assume mostly because I don't dye my hair. Even just getting a couple of inches off the bottom of my hair made such a difference in how much tangles I was experiencing, which really surprised me because my hair was tangling from like the ends practically to the roots, it felt like. And so it wasn't obvious to me that just getting the ends off would make it not tangle like higher up on my hair strand. But because the tangling was starting lower on my hair, just getting those rough ends off really made a significant difference. Another one that is kind of curly girl method related is if you are exclusively finger detangling. So this is something that the actual curly girl method handbook recommends, is just using nothing at all other than your fingers. And for some people that is doable. I think I could do that if I really wanted to. I don't do that for the record, but I think I could because I have minimal enough tangles that I could. I just don't prioritize spending my time that way, honestly. But for people who have a tendency to get tangles, finger detangling just doesn't get them to where their hair is ever fully detangled, especially if you have the pixie knots, those like individual hair strands that catch on themselves. Those are like seemingly impossible to get rid of with just your fingers. And essentially what I'm saying is finger detangling isn't always as completely effective as detangling with a comb or a brush. And if you aren't ever fully getting your hair detangled, then that's just going to lead to more tangles, because if there's even a little bit of a tangle left somewhere in your hair, then the surrounding hairs are going to be more likely to catch on it again shortly after. Last but not least, I did want to throw in here that hair thickness, like your individual hair strand thickness, does seem to play a role in tangling as well. People who have finer hair are just more prone to damage than people with thicker hair because their hair is literally smaller and therefore more fragile. And so some people with super fine hair, like people often say baby fine hair, may just find that their hair is going to tangle somewhat no matter what they do. I think that that is the case for a lot of little kids, and I think that's where that term of baby hair comes from. That super duper fine hair just is fragile, and it's going to take on some damage almost no matter what you do. It's just a matter of nature and genetics, but how you take care of your hair, specifically with chemical treatments, can make a significant difference in at least reducing the amount of tangles that you could have. So I kind of think of it as like some people might be able to get like basically tangle free. I am one of those people, and I just consider myself lucky to just have hair that is fine, but not so fine that it's super tangle prone. But that just might not be possible for everybody. If you are somebody who has a lot of tangles yourself, or maybe you have a kiddo that has a lot of tangles, leave me a comment letting me know what has worked well for you, maybe things you've tried that haven't worked well for you, because I'm sure there will be other people who will come across this video who could benefit from your expertise too. I'll see you guys next time.